Hey, how are you? Everybody, welcome. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. You are arriving in the right place right now because we're going to give you 3 secrets today for sermon prep. It is Tuesday. Sunday is like a couple days away. It's coming. You feel like you just finished preaching, but you got to do it again, like just in a couple days. So you're right in between when you last did it and when you got to do it again. And how great that you get to spend right about an hour with us. And we've got Matt Adair. Matt, go ahead and say hi, my friend.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Good to see you.
And we've got Matt, and Matt is going to bring it today and give you 3 secrets for sermon prep, because right now you're in between when you did it last and when you're going to do it again, and you're like, oh man, I've already got to start getting ready for Sunday. And maybe you're already prepared. So that's awesome, but we're going to give you some ways to do it better, more efficiently, more consistently. All the things that you all ask us for week after week after week, we're going to bring it today. And so we're excited you're here. Again, my name's Sam. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. If you're just arriving, you're going to find a chat box here in Webinar Jam in this Google Hangout. Go ahead and just say hi in this chat box. Say what your name is and where you're from. Just tell us where you are tuning in from, and we're excited you're here. If you are totally ready for Sunday morning, just say I'm totally ready for Sunday morning in the chat. What we're going to do today is Matt is going to share with you 3 secrets that he has been using to prepare for sermons, preaching 40-plus times a year. And consistency will always trump intensity in sermon prep, right? It's a marathon and not a sprint. We see Catherine, we see Stephen, we see Lubel, we see Richard. Wow, everybody is just pouring in. This is fantastic. Thank you all so much for being here. Tim from Louisville. What's up, Tim? I'm a Louisville guy. Eric, Marcelo from Brazil, welcome. Our Brazilian friends are here. Eric, Jackson, Tennessee. If you're just getting here, go ahead and put in the chat box who you are, where you're from. My name is Sam Hill. You've arrived in the right place. If you want to get better at preaching, this is where you need to be for the next hour. All right? We're excited. Harrison is here. Carlo, Patty, Joseph, Greg, and John from Chicago. Tag team, what's up, guys? Welcome. We are so pumped you're here. Tell us who you are and where you are in this chat. You want to become familiar with this chat because you're going to be able to ask our presenter today, Matt Adair, some questions about preaching prep. And, you know, here's something kind of fun. When I was in college at the University of Georgia, Matt came, and that's right, go Dogs. Matt and I are both dog fans. And Matt came to a college ministry and preached the paint off the walls. And to this day, I remember his main point. And so I'm just telling you, he's going to bring it today, and you're going to be like, this is going to be a game changer. So we're pumped. Bob is here. Craig is here. Nate is here. All right. Puerto Rico, welcome from Puerto Rico. Somebody from Pakistan and the Philippines, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Go Gamecocks. All right, we got a little SEC action going. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. Craig and Bob, welcome. Victor, Dustin. We're going to begin in just about 2 minutes or so. Once again, my name's Sam Hill, and we've got Matt Adair here. We're going to talk about 3 secrets to sermon prep today. What I'd like you to do is just 2 things. One, I want you just to, if you can, for just an hour or so, just take your phone and just slide it away from you, okay? Out of arm's reach if you need to, all right? So that you can actually focus and just get out something to take notes with so that you can actually write down what Matt is going to talk about so that it can impact what you're doing today. We want to make an impact today in your preaching. Matt, just give us a little teaser from today, man.
Look, when we're done, you're going to have the opportunity. You're going to have a plan that will keep you from having to scramble to make sure you're ready for Sunday, from having to guess at what you're preaching this fall, and also make sure that you're not disconnected spiritually so that you actually believe what you're saying on Sundays. So that's the kind of stuff we'll talk about over the next few minutes.
I love it. And Aaron Johnson is here. Aaron, can you say hi real quick? Just say hi. Aaron is gonna.
Hello.
There she is. She's
How's it
running the
going?
chat. She's running the chat. So if you've got a
Yes.
question, Aaron is the one that you want to get the question to.
There's a lot of people in here today.
He's the gatekeeper for all questions. And so Wes from Alabama, maybe Roll Tide there. Joseph from South Carolina. We are so pumped you all here. Mel from Australia. Ray from Indianapolis. I mean, talk about a world event. This is fantastic. Absolutely love it. Pete from Buffalo. David from Arizona. Probably a little hot in Arizona for David today. We are pumped you're here. Aaron, go ahead and bring up the slide share. We want to respect your all's time and be as efficient as we can. We're going to talk about 3 secrets today for your sermon prep. And if you're just getting here, I talked about you might feel like you just finished preaching, okay? Like it was just 2 or 3 days ago that you were preaching a sermon, but guess what? In 3 or 4 days or so, you got to do it again, all right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you 3 secrets today that you can use to prepare for your sermons. And here's my goal, okay? The goal for today is for you to be able to spend about an hour with us and actually have something that will impact what you're doing right now, okay? So many times we say in our preaching, well, I'm going to spend another time to work on it. I'm going to set aside time to work on preaching. And you talk about doing it, talking about investing in yourself, talk about learning new strategies, but you never actually get to it. Why? Just because life goes on, right? And life doesn't wait for us. And so you get slammed, you get busy, and you never end up actually doing it. So the goal for today is you're going to spend about an hour with us, and we're going to invest in you because you need to have people working on you, and you're going to leave feeling more equipped. That's the goal. And if you stay to the end, Aaron, go ahead and show them the resource that they're going to get on the next slide. Matt is going to give you what we call the greatest tool in your toolbox. Matt, just elaborate on that, the greatest tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, I'm going to point you to a free resource that I use all the time. I've used it consistently for the past 5 years. I've shared it with the 30-plus clients that I have right now, helping them develop their preaching. So you should stick around. It's going to be really, really helpful for you.
I love it. Greg's is here. Zach is here from St. Louis. Tim from Tulsa. Guys, welcome. Thanks for being here. Here's what makes this different today, okay? Here's what makes this different today. Aaron's going to show you on the slide deck. Look, this isn't a seminary class, okay? The Rocket Company, we've been helping church leaders for over a decade, 10,000 plus churches all over the world, okay? And when we talk to church leaders, they ask us about things like time. I feel pressed for time. I don't feel as prepped as I should when I get up on a Sunday morning. They talk about, hey, I need to be able to spend more time with my family. I feel stressed. I feel exhausted, right? And all of us know how fast church leaders are burning out and dropping out of ministry. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that the stuff that you learned in seminary and you're rocking and rolling there, hey, listen, that doesn't carry you necessarily when it comes to systems and actually running your sermon calendar, your prep, and getting to Sunday morning excited. And so that's the stuff that we talk about. And that's what makes this different, is that this is what you ask us for, is what we're going to bring today. I want to just introduce myself again, and I'm going to pass it off to Matt. We're going to get off to the races. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader at the Rocket Company. There is a picture of me that you're going to see. My family, Kristen, 2 boys, 7 and 5. I've been in local church leadership for a long time, graduate of UGA, which is where Matt and I go all the way back to there. I do own a 70-pound poodle, which is just hilarious in hindsight that actually happened. And I just want you to know that my passion and the Rocket Company's passion is to equip you to enjoy ministry, right? When we talk to church leaders so often, they actually have this feeling of like, oh man, dread on Sunday morning just because they're so tired. And we want to equip you and invest in you and give you systems that allow you to get your joy back, your weekends back. You get fired up for Sunday morning, and you look forward to it, and that's when you're going to actually thrive. So that is my passion. That's Matt's passion. That's why we're here. So I'm going to pass it off to Matt Adair. Matt, go ahead, introduce yourself, and take it away. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks, Sam. I really appreciate it. Really, really grateful to be spending some time with you today. As Sam said, our entire goal here is not to talk theory. We're going to talk practical realities about how we can help you preach better sermons and maybe save some time and save some stress in terms of your sermon preparation. So really, really looking forward to that. Just a little bit about me, so you get to know a little bit about who I am. So I've been here in Athens, Georgia for the past 12 years. I came and helped restart a church and have been the lead pastor of Christ Community Church since 2004. And so the biggest thing for me is that I have had to learn from the age of 28 when I became lead pastor how to figure out how to deliver consistent sermons that are going to point people to Jesus and are going to help people follow Jesus. So the biggest thing that I want to do is to be able to help you figure out, learn some things that I've learned along the way. Okay, so after 12 years, look, here's the thing that's happened. I've done a lot of things right. We have this saying down here in the South that even blind squirrels find nuts. And so along the way, as I've been preaching week in and week out, I've picked up some things that have been helpful. We've seen God do some really amazing things here in Athens. And so, but along the way, I've done some things wrong, and I haven't always gotten it right. And it isn't just all these things that are in the past. I'm continuing to learn. And so I had to learn some things the hard way. After a few years, here's what was happening. So again, I got here to Athens in 2004 as 28 years old as a lead pastor. And after a few years, here's what I picked up on. I was guessing at what I was supposed to preach next, okay? I didn't have a plan for what I was preaching going forward. And so not only that, but I was scrambling to be ready to preach week in and week out. Like there were times when we'd be singing songs right before I preached, and I was still editing sermons. I was still trying to figure out how was I going to make this point and illustrate that particular point. The truth is, I was trying to keep up, but I wasn't getting any better. I had taken everything that I had learned. I have a graduate degree, but I had taken everything that I had learned and I had used it, and I had plateaued. Now, thankfully, things have changed. I think the church might have gotten rid of me at some point in time if I hadn't gotten better, but we figured some things out, and we moved forward. So I had to learn things the hard way. I didn't have a resource like this. I didn't have a webinar like this. I didn't have training like this to be able to help me. So I had to learn things the hard way, but I'm here for a pretty clear reason. I want to make it simple for you. I want to take the things that I've learned along the way, and I want to just condense some of those down to some things that I think can really help you. So let's talk about the hard way. Okay, this is the hard way to do sermon preparation. One is you wait until the last minute to choose what you're going to preach, the text or the topic. That's pretty difficult. You could do it, but it's not easy. Another way that preaching gets hard and preparation gets hard to preach is if you never actually finish your sermon preparation. You are in constant editing mode, and some of us are even editing on the fly. That's really difficult to do. It's really difficult to deliver the kind of messages that you want to deliver if you're waiting until the last minute to choose what to preach, and if you never actually finish your sermon preparation. It's also really, really difficult for you to preach the kind of sermons you want to preach if you're acting like what you're saying is changing your life. You're just performing. It's not actually changing your life. Whatever text that you're preaching on, whatever topic, whatever big idea you're trying to communicate to the people that are in the room with you, if you're just acting it out, if you're just playing a game, that's a really, really difficult way for you to sustain the kind of long-term success you want to have as a communicator. So I just figured we'd take a few minutes and I'd kind of show you some things. And so if you want to learn the secret formula that helps me finish my sermon preparation on Wednesdays, I want to share it with you, and that's absolutely the case. So I'm preaching this upcoming Sunday, and I'll be done tomorrow. And that's been the way in which it's worked for me for years. Now, one of the things I didn't tell you was this. Since 2013, I've preached more than 40 weekends a year as a part-time pastor. So I am bivocational by choice. I'm the lead pastor of a church, and it's not a mega church, but we have 300 to 400 people in our church. It's a great church. I love it. But I also own a coaching and consulting firm. I work with a lot of church leaders. I currently have over 35 clients that I'm helping them develop as preachers, so I'm kind of living in two worlds. But I still am able to preach 40 weekends a year, be done with my preparation on Wednesday, and I don't reuse older material. I don't copy anybody else's sermons. So I want to just kind of share with you kind of what I'm doing. And so I'll say this up front. I don't know if my results are typical. I might even say this, that my results are not typical. And here's what I found as I coach and consult with different leaders in different churches. What I found about me is that I was willing to change my approach when faced with just some brutal facts about who I was and kind of my performance as a preacher. I also know this about me, that I'm willing to work hard. I don't really believe in silver bullets. What I'm not giving you is some kind of magic formula, okay? I absolutely believe in hard work, and I treat my sermon preparation as the single most important part of my job. I am a pastor. I am called to shepherd and care for people. And the single most effective way that I can care for the men and women and children in our church is for me to do the work of planning, preparing, and delivering messages that point people to Jesus. Okay? So my why is very strong. So I have a belief that everything that I do, that I am created to bring glory to God, to make Jesus famous, to make it impossible in the city of Athens and beyond for people to be able to ignore the real Jesus. We want to make it hard for people to die and go to hell. So that drive, that purpose for me is very, very strong. And so that has absolutely driven how I've thought through and been able to map out a plan for how I plan and prepare sermons, okay? So I just want to go ahead and tell you, here are the 3 secrets for sermon preparation that I want to share with you. The first one is this. The first secret that I want to talk about today is an annual calendar and the importance of that. The second secret that I want to share is a consistent preparation plan. I'm going to walk you through these, okay? I'm going to basically tell you this is how you do it. This is how you build an annual calendar. This is how you develop a consistent preparation schedule, all right? And then the third secret, and I never want to assume this, it's why I wanted to include it today, is that I think a critical component for sermon preparation, the third secret I want to share with you is this: a commitment to meditation and prayer, to being able to take in the Bible, to be able to think deeply about it so that it doesn't just impact your head, but it really does invade your heart, and then you respond personally on your own, and as you're studying and preparing the text that you're going to preach, that you're interacting with God in a real way, so that you're able to deliver the kind of messages that you want to deliver, all right? So let's talk about this first secret, and let's talk about an annual calendar. I'm actually going to go in and turn my camera off so that you're not distracted by me. I want us to lock in, and I want to absolutely focus on what it is that you and I need to be doing when we talk about an annual calendar, okay? So an annual calendar is simply this. It is a simple schedule that eliminates the problem of not knowing what to preach next, okay? So if you don't have an annual calendar, if you're not thinking about 2017 or the rest of 2016, then I want to help you build out your calendar. And if you do have an annual calendar, you need to pay attention, because I'm going to go next level for you and actually help you optimize the calendar that you already have, okay? So here's the first thing that you want to do. If you're going to create an annual calendar, if you want to not guess at planning what you're going to preach next, you want to create a template for your annual calendar, okay? So a basic planning system that is repeatable and reproducible. So let's start simple. Just use a spreadsheet on your computer that has 5 columns. It has the date, and you would list all the dates for the Sunday or the weekends in the year. You want to be able to then list out whatever sermon series, that's the second column. You have your date, you have your sermon series, you have the biblical text that you're going to preach, you have the big idea that you want to get across, and then put a 5th column in for notes. So you have your spreadsheet, you have a date column, a sermon series column, a column for your biblical text that you're going to preach, the big idea from that text, and then a column for notes, okay? So you just create a very, very simple spreadsheet. Now here's where we begin to go next level, okay? When you create your calendar, you want to find the natural rhythm that exists in your community so that you're not guessing at what kind of sermons to preach, okay? So some of you are from traditions that use the liturgical calendar. If you don't know what the liturgical calendar is, I'm not going to necessarily answer that for you today, but if you're familiar with things like Lent and Advent and Ordinary Time and Christmas time as a season, not just a day, then you're familiar with the idea of a liturgical calendar. That's a great way for you to preach different emphases from the Bible throughout the year, all right? Now, most of us on this call do not come from traditions that use a liturgical calendar, so I want to show you how to use a cultural calendar. Now, this is a global event, but I live here in the States, and one of the principles that I come back to when I teach, when I preach, is talk about what you know. So I'm going to give you the cultural calendar that we use here in the southeastern part of the United States, here in Athens, Georgia, about an hour outside of Atlanta. Okay, so in our calendar, we have 6 different seasons of the year. Season number 1 is winter. For us, that goes from January 1 all the way up to Good Friday. That's the first season, winter. The second season for us is Easter. Easter for us goes from Easter Day all the way through Mother's Day. The third season after Easter, the third season is summer. And for us, that lasts from Mother's Day through the end of July. Now, some of you are going to weep and grieve with me because here in Athens, my 3 sons, I've got an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and they start school on August 3rd. I mean, that's almost criminal, okay? But for us, summer ends at the end of July, okay? The start of school is our 4th season. It is a distinct season. It's a distinct focus. It's a distinct way of life. It's a distinct schedule for people. So the start of school for us is August and September. And then our last 2 seasons are fall, which is October and November, and then Christmas, which is December. Now, maybe that's familiar to you. Maybe that resonates with you. Maybe those 6 seasons work for you. Maybe you have to move some dates around. Maybe you have your own way of thinking through that. But I think when you take a kind of a rhythm, a schedule, different seasons of the year that give you different emphases, then it helps you kind of know what you can preach. So let me show you one way that we apply this. So we use this rhythm to go deep and to go wide. So for us, winter, summer, and fall are seasons where we want to go deep, where we want to take the people who are gathered in their room and we want to take them deeper in their faith, because that doesn't tend to be seasons where we get a lot of incoming traffic. But Easter, the start of school, and Christmas are seasons where we see more and more people coming in our doors, and so we want to go wide. We want to address topics that people coming in from the outside are familiar with, and then we can help them by giving them God's answers to their questions. But I'm not doing that all the time. We have seasons where we're going to go deep, and we have seasons where we're going to go wide. And so that's what you create in a template. The first thing you do in an annual calendar, you build your template. You have your columns, you create different seasons of the year, and you've got that. Now here's the second thing, because I want to actually put this in motion for you. Once you have your template, the second thing that you do is you sketch out 6 months at a time. So I always want to stay way ahead. So for us, we want to be able to plan things out, and we actually have a schedule where we can look at for the next 2 years. So what we're just finishing up right now for us in our church is our schedule for winter through summer 2017. So by the end of July, we'll have the rest of 2016 mapped out, and we'll have the first half of 2017 mapped out. Now, we do that in pencil. I include other people in the process. We have a preaching team, we have an elder board, and they're involved in the process, but I started out by mapping out in pencil, okay? So this isn't locked in. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm just mapping out the different themes and topics and texts that I believe we should be focusing on. And so we've created the template, and then we're sketching out 6 months at a time. We're talking about it. And then the third thing we do is that we lock in 3 months ahead of time. So we have a template, we're sketching out 6 months at a time, and then 3 months before we will jump into a series, we will lock it down. the reason we do that is because I don't think annual goals work. I don't think they work real well in preaching, because if you think about everything that's happened in your church, in your community, in our world over the last 12 months, if you had guessed at what to preach this upcoming Sunday a year ago, that might not resonate with you now. So we like to sketch ahead in pencil and then put it in pen proverbially 3 months out. And we lock that in, meaning this is the text, this is the series, this is the topic, this is what we're going to address, so that we can not only prepare as preachers, but so we can help our creative team, so our graphics, set design, music is all in step with one another, and we can engage with our groups and our children's ministry to make sure there's alignment with our curriculum. So we have the sermon series overview that we're going to create, which is a one-page document which is going to explain for us what the series is. We're going to describe it, we're going to explain it, and we're going to detail the text and topics. We're essentially answering 3 questions. What are we going to talk about? Why are we talking about it? And how are we going to make those points? Now, some people, I get this question all the time. Can you change things last minute? Yes, because the Holy Spirit doesn't always work on our schedule. But what we've found, and we've been using a calendar since 2007, is that most of the time we find that leaning on the Holy Spirit ahead of time to plan our schedule works really, really well. It's shocking sometimes. Things that we planned 6 months ago and locked in 3 months ago will be the exact thing for people in the room based on what they're going through now and what we're wrestling with as a church that cares about our city and our world. Okay? So, in terms of this first secret, that's what we're going to do. So I want to put this in motion. So I want you to think about 2 of my clients, Pastor Nick and Pastor Jamar. Now, I've changed their names to protect the innocent, but I want you to think about Pastor Nick. Pastor Nick is like a lot of my clients when I start working with them, is that he has a fantastic plan in his head that changes about 3 times every week. And so usually somewhere around Thursday is when he really sits down and gets serious about what he's going to preach. What that means is that he really doesn't know what he's going to say 2 days from now. His musicians, they don't know what he's going to be preaching on. There's no consistency in terms of the message between what he's preaching and what's being talked about in their group structure. And so there's this constant sense of scrambling, trying to figure out what's coming next, okay? Now, you can imagine the stress that exists for Pastor Nick as well as his entire team. Now, contrast that with Pastor Jamar. Pastor Jamar began using an annual calendar 3 years ago and putting these principles in place, creating a template, sketching out 6 months, locking in 3 months ahead. And so what he's found is not only is he less stressed, but there's clarity and focus in the songs that they're singing on Sunday. There's clarity and focus in his group's ministry because he did the hard work of planning ahead and planning where he's going to go into the future. So he knows that he may talk about this on Sunday and doesn't have to necessarily talk about that on Sunday as well, because he knows 2 Sundays later he's going to address that particular issue. I actually had this happen this last week. We're preaching through some texts in Jeremiah, and there's a big section in prayer in the text that I had last Sunday, and I didn't talk about prayer because I knew that was going to be the main focus this coming Sunday. So that's the illustration. Now, for me, the reason I bring up Pastor Nick and Pastor Jamar is I'm wondering, who are you more like right now? Are you more like Pastor Nick and you're scrambling? You have no idea what you're preaching on Sunday. Or are you like Pastor Jamar and you have a plan and you know what you're preaching, and so you're not freaking out here on a Tuesday afternoon trying to figure out what you're going to say next. Right? That's the first secret. If you want to plan sermons and do a great job at that in your preparation, use an annual calendar. Here's the second secret. The second secret is this. We want to make sure that you are using a consistent preparation schedule. So I want to share with you my actual schedule. Now here's the biggest principle in the whole aspect of how I prepare sermons. I prepare 2 weeks in advance. So I'm going to walk you through 15 days of sermon preparation. And so day 15 is when I will actually preach the sermon. Okay, so let's start with day 1 on Sunday. Here's what I'm going to do on day 1. I am going to walk in, and all I want to do on day 1 is I want to, on a Sunday afternoon, after I've preached in the morning, I want to walk in with the text that I'm preaching on day 15, and I want to read through it a couple of times. And I just want to, I will write it down. You could print it out, but I like to write down the text in English that I'm going to be preaching. There's something that makes a connection for me mentally about that. I'm just writing it down and beginning to circle some words or some phrases, some ideas that I may not be familiar with. And then I just want to kind of keep myself moving forward. I don't want to do a lot of heavy work because I've just preached, okay? But I want to begin thinking about where I'm going in 2 weeks. So that's day one. I just want to write down the text, and I want to begin asking some questions. On day two, the following Monday, I want to spend some additional time reading through the text 2 to 3 times, and I want to continue to ask some questions. I want to begin thinking about what I know about the context. I haven't gotten into any kind of other outside resources. I'm simply trying to spend time with God, thinking through, writing down, sketching out, making little marks on a page about how this phrase fits with that phrase, and just bringing everything that I know into that particular text that I want to preach. And so that's day 2 on Monday. On day 3 and day 4, that Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm not going to touch the text, and you'll see why when we get into the second week. So day 3, day 4, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't do any sermon prep for this sermon that we're talking about right now. On Thursday, which is day 5, I want to spend time preparing the sermon and working with the text, bringing in outside resources where I need them, to the point where I have the big idea for the sermon locked in. So at the end of day 5, which is 10 days before I'm actually going to preach the sermon, I know the main point that I want to make. Day 6, Friday, don't touch it. Day 7, Saturday, don't touch it. That's my day off. Day 8, on Sunday, I'm not going to touch this sermon because I'm preaching another one. On day 9, the following Monday, I'm not doing any sermon preparation for this either. But on day 10, which is a Tuesday for me, I'm going to write the draft of my sermon. Now, there are lots of ways to do that. Some guys manuscript, some guys sketch things out. I use a process called mind mapping. But on Tuesday, so this morning, I worked on the sermon that I will preach in 2 weeks. I worked on that sermon, figuring that out, and then locking in the one that I have for this Sunday. So this morning, I worked on the sermon for this Sunday, and I now have a draft. Tomorrow, day 11, Wednesday, I will write the final version of this sermon. So guess what? That means that on Wednesday, 4 days before I'm actually going to preach the sermon, I'm done. I'm finished. Now, are things marinating on days 12, 13, and 14? Absolutely. But I'm not scrambling. I get to spend time with my family. I get to have an actual day off. If things come up in our church that I need to deal with on a Thursday or Friday, I don't have to lock out the world because I haven't finished my sermon yet. The power of a 2-week consistent schedule has been a complete game changer for me. It takes me about 10 to 15 hours a week to prepare a sermon, and I find that that's pretty common. But I'm not trying to cram all of that into 1 week. I spread it out and work over 2 weeks. So that's the schedule from day 1 to day 15. And when I'm working with clients, I tell guys, look, different people are wired different ways. Some of you work great under the clock. That's fine. I'm just talking to you if you don't want to scramble and you don't want to keep walking into Sunday mornings still not having your sermon figured out. You can absolutely be done early and give yourself space to let the sermon just kind of soak into your soul so that you're not just coming by guessing at what you're wanting to preach. So again, I want you to think about Pastor Nick and Pastor Jamar and think about their situation. So again, Pastor Nick, the way he prepares his sermon, it's very intuitive, and because of the needs that exist in his church, just like your church and my church, he's consistently reactive to the needs and the things that are going on in his church. He doesn't have a consistent sermon preparation schedule. He just finds ways to fit it in, which a lot of times means he's having to get up early, stay up late, so it means he's not getting enough sleep, means he's burning the candle on both ends, and far too often he is that guy walking in on Sunday morning kind of shooting from the hip. There's been more than one Sunday when he's gotten up saying, hey y'all, I had planned to preach on this, but I really feel like God is telling me to preach that. Now that's fine the first time you do that, but once you do that about 4 out of 6 weeks, then maybe you're just guessing, okay? That's Pastor Nick. Pastor Jamar uses this 2-week plan, and by Wednesday consistently, he's done, not always, but one of the reasons that he's able to finish consistently is because he blocks out time on those days using this schedule, which is non-negotiable, that unless somebody is dead in his church, then that is the time that he has to spend, because again, there's nothing more important that he can do for his church than prepare his sermons. And because he uses that schedule and he blocks out that time, he's consistently finished by Wednesday. The sermon can kind of just work on him over the rest of the time between Wednesday and Sunday preaching it, and he can actually take time off over the weekend and spend time with his family and invest in the people who matter most to him. So again, my question for you is, who are you more like? Are you more like Pastor Nick, or are you more like Pastor Jamar? Now let's talk about this third secret. Let's talk about a commitment to meditation and prayer. I wish we didn't have to talk about this. I wish that you and I executed on what we actually know, and that is the importance of working deeply with the Bible personally, to where we are reading it and we are thinking deeply about it, to where we are just sort of unpacking it and taking it apart and learning from it and listening to God in such a way that it fills our mind and it invades our heart, so that we begin to be transformed from the inside out as we see who God is and how we respond to Him. And that work of meditation, which for some of us is going to happen through journaling, or for some of us is going to happen as we take walks. It's going to be as we look at the Bible, we read it, we take it in, we marinate over it slowly, and we allow God to convince us that He actually does love us. We allow God to remind us, not of new content so often, but just to remind us that He is faithful and He is great and He is good and He is holy and He is the one who satisfies every desire that you and I might have, which makes us impenetrable when we prepare to preach and stand in front of people as fellow sinners who need grace, but who have been gifted and called by God to open our mouths and to tell people about who God is, what it looks like to follow after Him, and what it looks like to join Him in His work in this world. Now, some of us have gotten very, very good at faking it. Some of us have gotten very, very good at looking at the Bible no more often than when our Bible app sends us a verse of the day. So what I want to just simply remind you of is the importance of not just interacting and engaging with the Bible in a cursory manner as you get ready to preach, but to carve out time where you can dig into the Scriptures and you can take it in and you can allow it to work on you. As preachers, part of our job is to dig into the Scriptures. But for you and I as human beings, we need the Scriptures to dig into us and to work on us. And what we find is that prayer, our communication with God, comes to life as we engage with the Scriptures. Now again, for a lot of you, you know this, and maybe this is just a reminder, and I don't know what God's doing in your life right now, and so that reminder might just simply be to affirm some things that you're putting into practice in your life. For others of us, it may be God gently but persistently pointing out that your practice of never engaging with the Bible unless you're actually preaching the Bible is not a healthy way for you to live as a human being. It was never what He intended for you. Now, when we go back to Pastor Nick and Pastor Jamar, the reason I'm talking about this is because this is what I see. Again, Pastor Nick, like a lot of my clients, comes in and his engagement with the Bible is cursory on a personal basis. It's he engages with the Bible only with the text that he's preaching. He's convinced himself that all he needs to cultivate a healthy life with God is to study the Bible in order to preach the Bible. Now let's be clear. Your study of the Bible for preaching is a source of deep meditation and should be something that you consistently, as you sit down and do your preparation, it is meditation and it should fuel prayer in your life. But we can never limit ourselves to that. But that's what's happening in Pastor Nick's life. Pastor Jamar, and look, Pastor Jamar would be the first to tell you that he has gotten here after a long struggle and after over 2.5 decades of failing in a lot of these areas, including prayer, but by finding a commitment and making a commitment by God's grace to engaging deeply with the Scriptures, not a Bible study, not a devotional Bible that somebody else wrote all the study notes and so he reads all the study notes. No, no, no. By engaging with the actual text of the Bible, his life with God has grown deeper, his affection for God has grown stronger, and it has been a significant change in his ministry from the pulpit as a communicator, preaching and helping people grow into a deepening relationship with Jesus. So again, I just come back to this. As you think about your life, as you think about your life with God, as you think about meditation and prayer and the role that it plays in your life, who are you more like? Are you more like Pastor Nick? Are you more like Pastor Jamar? So here's what I would say. These 3 things are secrets only because you and I don't put them into practice. My guess is that for most of us, the idea of a calendar and the idea of a consistent schedule for preparation and meditation and prayer is not something new. The biggest challenge that you and I face as preachers and communicators, as men and women who have been called by God to communicate the Word of God, is whether or not we will actually do the hard work of execution. So we can talk all the live long day. But the question for you is, how do you take a step forward in putting these things into practice? So my hope is we've been interacting here, and I forgot to remind you to ask your questions, but hopefully you've been getting those in. If you haven't, get those in, and would love to do anything I can to help dig into some of the details on what we've talked about and answer any of your questions.
So good, Matt. Man, thank you. Hey, put a 1, the number 1 in the chat box. If any of that, even just a little bit of it, was helpful for you, and you can take that away today, and it can impact your preaching prep. Matt's got his camera back on, and listen, we're going to do some questions. We've had a lot of great questions come in, and so Aaron, can you just facilitate some questions over to Matt here, and he'll answer them.
Yes, Matt, you are getting tons of 1s in the chat stream right now. That was so great. The chat stream was on fire. So we have a ton of questions here, so I'll just get through a few and then we'll get back to it. What is the hardest habit that you had to break in your sermon prep?
The hardest habit that I had to break in my sermon prep was looking at a biblical text one time and assuming I knew what it said.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was the easiest one for me. And I was just kind of thinking if there was another one that trumped that, but no. When I think back over 12 years of being here week in and week out, it was just that kind of looking at a text one time and going, oh, I know what that says already.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned earlier that sometimes you get a group of people together to go through the calendar with. How many people does that consist of, or do you just sit down with one person to help you with your calendar?
So I have a preaching team of 3 other people. And they kind of engage with me there, and so it's probably first step is just me, second step is with our preaching team, and then we run that through our elders. We think that the entire group is responsible for what we preach, and that's the decision-making group for us, and we have 4 elders in our church, and I think that group of 4 to 6 is great for decision-making. Once you get beyond 6, then it just gets really difficult to make a good kind of concise decision.
Awesome. Do you mind recapping the 5 columns you used in your annual calendar?
Sure. So the first one is just the date, and so I mean you just start putting in the Sundays of the year if you're preaching just on Sundays or weekends, however you do that. Then the second would be whatever sermon series you're preaching on, and early on we don't try to come up with a catchy name. We don't use a lot of catchy names in the end anyway, but it just may be like Galatians, that would be the sermon series. And then we'll try to break that into the actual text that we want to preach on. And then once we begin to get the big idea, that's the fourth column. And then the fifth column is just notes. If I'm out, if somebody else is out, if it's a particular holiday weekend, we actually, because our attendance is influenced by such things as college football games, we actually put in the schedule for the University of Georgia football team, so we kind of know if it's a home or away game. So little things like that.
That's weird. That's how I plan my life, too, because my husband's a Georgia fan. Damon actually had a great question. He said, if I'm already playing catch-up, how am I going to find time to create this year-long plan?
Yeah, for me, I think carve out an hour. Just take an hour and start there and see where you get. And then if you need another hour, build another hour. But I think my question would be, I know you're trying to catch up, and if your schedule's like mine, there's always more to do than you have time to do. But I think that your preaching calendar and preaching in general goes into the significant important category that you have to absolutely carve out time for. So I'd push some things to the side, delay some things if you need to. Start with an hour and build out your calendar and go there.
Okay. There was a lot of buzz in the chat stream about mind mapping. Some people didn't know what it was. So could you explain that? And then any resources that you've used to learn more about mind mapping as well?
Yeah, so mind mapping just basically is a combination of it's kind of it's basically a picture that uses different colors and kind of a cyclical pattern. So it just kind of goes around a circle. I'm sitting here actually looking at my mind map from last Sunday, and that's just what I use. I use an app on the iPad to create that. And in terms of resources, it's one that we're actually working on right now. There's not a lot of great ones out there. I think I've got a blog post or two on it on my own site, which isn't necessarily helpful for y'all right now. But I think to me, what it's enabled me to do is to not have to manuscript everything. And here's the kicker. It's the catalyst for why I haven't preached with any notes for the past 5 years. Not once. And it's been because of mind mapping.
That's awesome. Paul had a good one. What about a guy who preaches 3 times per week? How do you adjust the preparation schedule for that?
Yeah, I think one, you have to start off with knowing what your total time available is, realistically, and then being able to just kind of move around. I still think you can do kind of a 2-week schedule, but you may be having to spend some time in different places off of that. So if you've got 2 on a Sunday morning, Sunday night, and a Wednesday night, then you just move some of the dates around. That's why I gave you Sunday to Sunday, but I gave you like numbered days, so you could actually count out the number of days. So if you could do this by starting Wednesday, your Wednesday prep on day 1, and day 15 is another Wednesday. So you would just kind of have to do that, and the biggest adjustment you have to make is the total amount of time you have for preparation, and then just divide that by 3 and know how much time you have to give to it. That's usually the question I get asked a lot is, that sounds great over 2 weeks, how much time do you take? Which is why I told y'all it takes me about 10 to 15 hours a week, and quite honestly, it's pretty close to 10 consistently, because I only have, again, I'm a part-time pastor, I only have 20 hours a week, and I have other responsibilities than just preaching.
Fantastic. Matt, hey, listen, we're going to do some more questions, okay? If you still have questions, go ahead and put them into the chat box, and Matt will answer more of those in a minute. I got one more for you, Matt, though, and then we'll come back and do more questions about 5 minutes. And if you stay to the end, don't forget we're going to give you the greatest tool in your toolbox as well, just for being here. My question, Matt, is the Rocket Company, we interact with so many church leaders, all over the world, tons and tons and tons. They come to a 1-hour webinar, and they hear somebody like you, and you shared how you've done it wrong and that kind of thing, but they hear your content. And it makes an immediate impact. They're excited, they're encouraged, but it's also like, man, how do you get to that point? Like Damon asked a second ago, right? If you're already behind, how do you catch up? And I think sometimes there's this perception that somebody like you're delivering content on a webinar, you're done with your sermons on Wednesday, that you just woke up one day and it was like that. You woke up one day and you stopped from going from the sprinter's mentality, where you're just all over the place, to, hey, you're ready on Wednesday. How important are, systems, coaching for you, and setting aside that time? Talk about how you got to that point, so people don't just think that you went there, on one Sunday to next Sunday and everything was different. Even something like, Matt, you say you preach 40 times a year. Everybody pay attention to that, because that means there's 12 weeks, theoretically, where Matt's not preaching. okay, and he can actually take a break. And we talk to church leaders, talk to preachers, and what do they say? I'm totally exhausted. And it's like, well, then take a break. I can't. Well, why can't you? Because we don't have anybody else, and so you don't have the systems in place. So can you just comment on the importance of systems, you developing those, and coaching investment yourself, or maybe just a minute or two?
Yeah, I remember the first time that my dad taught me to drive a manual transmission car, drive a stick. And the first time I had to make a left-hand turn driving a stick, I almost killed both of us because there were a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts. But over time, you learn a process, and I think that's what a system, a coaching program does for you. It not only helps you keep yourself accountable, but it also gives you a framework to be able to not have to make all these micro decisions. Part of the reason I can do what I do, working 2 jobs and preaching as well as I've ever preached, that was an assessment made by our elders recently, is the fact that I don't have to expend a ton of mental energy because a lot of the decisions about what I do and when I do it in preparation and planning has already been done for me.
Yep, huge. I think it's huge. And, I think you all would agree that being here just for an hour is time well spent. But I want you to think about this for a minute. If you could get Matt to coach you for 1 hour a month at your church, at wherever you do your sermon prep, in your office, at Starbucks, if you could have Matt come and just spend an hour with you a month, put a 1 in the chat box if you think that would have a drastic, huge impact on your prep. Put a 1 in the chat box if you'd love for somebody like Matt to coach you on a monthly basis on different topics, etc. Put a 1 in the chat box. Listen, you can't cover everything that you need to grow as a preacher in a 1-hour webinar. You have to invest in systems. You have to actually spend time working on yourself, setting time aside. And Erin's going to move on, and she's going to show you different types of systems that we have set up that can help you. Because here's the bottom line, okay? Old habits die super hard when it comes to sermon prep. Super hard. And Matt talks about, I believe, Pastor Nick, okay, who keeps doing the same stuff over and over and over, makes no changes, okay? And so you can come to a 1-hour webinar, but go back and keep doing the same old habits, and your calendar won't change at all, okay? So what I want you to know is that we've got something you're going to be excited, you're going to be thrilled that we've got a way for you to actually plug into a coaching program. If you put a 1 in the chat box and you want somebody like Matt to coach you, that's exactly what the Preaching Rocket is. And so we're going to walk through what the Preaching Rocket includes for you. It is a coaching program, a step-by-step coaching program where you can actually get a system to plug into to work on yourself. And I'm going to go off camera because I want you to be able to see everything that's included with this. I don't want you to miss any of it. And think about if you could have somebody like Matt Adair on site with you on a monthly basis going through. Let's look at these different modules that are included. Things like how to build a great sermon. Things like creating sermons that stick. Okay, how to deal with criticism. Not that anybody's ever been criticized in your preaching. How to develop an annual, a monthly, a weekly preaching calendar, which is something we got a lot of questions about. Hey, Matt, can you give us those 5 things again? Okay, you can plug into this model. Preaching to the unchurched, the crucial first 5 minutes, getting people to actually continue and participate. And look at more. I mean, you talk about preaching that elicits a response, preaching the gospel. Every single month, you can engage in one of these modules. There's 12 modules for a reason. Becoming a master of stories and illustrations. How to create a preaching dream team, right? Matt preaches 40 times a year, other 12 times. Other people are doing it, right? Because he's actually got a preaching team, as he mentioned. How to improve your sermon prep process. The missing ingredient that will change everything. Preaching Rocket, here's how it works. You're watching videos on a monthly basis. You're reading along with it. There is a community. We talk about old habits die hard. Some of you all just need other church leaders, other preachers who are in the same place as you are, going along at the same pace, the same time as you. That's exactly what a community's for. So Preaching Rocket's got video, reading, community, audio. You can take it with you. Let me tell you who this is for. Look, if you are a brand new pastor, maybe you're new in the ministry, maybe you're a college pastor, maybe you're a children's pastor, maybe you're a campus minister, maybe you just planted a church, and you need a solid foundation. You don't want to preach 52 weeks a year for the rest of your life. the Preaching Rocket's for you, okay? If you're Pastor 2, you're plateaued, you're stuck, you feel like, maybe like somebody shared earlier, what do you do if you're behind? You're just plateaued, you feel totally buried and overwhelmed. You need a system, okay? You have to have a system. Maybe you're Pastor 3, things are going great, but you want to build out leadership. You want to build out teams. You want to grow. You've got two choices. Look, you can either continue to go on fumes, okay, and don't spend any time working on yourself, or you can leverage a training platform that's designed by pastors for pastors. And I want you to look at everything that the Preaching Rocket includes. I want you to look at $3,500 of value. Matt does private coaching for church leaders and preachers all over the country, and that's what they pay for. That's what they invest in, is somebody who will spend time with them one-on-one. That is exactly, folks, what the Preaching Rocket is designed to do, is to invest in you on a planned schedule. Consistency will not happen without a system. I'm going to say that again. Consistency in your preaching will not happen without a system to lean on. And when you join the Preaching Rocket today, we've got a bonus for you. Look at this. Upfront Digital, which is an entire coaching program, $499 value that just simply helps you work on your delivery, on your presentation, so that people are engaged. We're going to offer that completely free for the first 75 people that sign up today for the Preaching Rocket. It is a 5-step process designed to make your next presentation your best one. And we've got a second bonus for you, 10 new preaching stories that you can have in your vault, in your toolbox. And so look at what you're going to get today when you join the Preaching Rocket. $3,520 value, 12 coaching models, audio, video. I mean, you take it with you on your iPhone, on your iPad, designed by pastors for pastors. Upfront Digital, a $500 program included at no additional cost. 10 new preaching stories, over a $4,000 value. Listen, look, if all this did was give you a steady plan to invest in yourself, if that's all it did, okay, if it would give you coaching and training from people like Matt, would it be worth it, okay? If it would help you have your weekends back. I mean, look at this. What's your weekend and your family life worth to you? I mean, a lot of church leaders are like, man, I just wish I had more time with my family. I wish that I look forward to Sunday. I wish that I could take Sunday back, take my weekends back. But yet, listen, you go back to doing the same thing, okay? Every single week is a sprint to the finish. Listen, preaching is a marathon. Listen to all the systems that Matt has in place. He's finished on Wednesday. He didn't wake up, and that just didn't happen overnight. He invested in systems and coaching and implementation. And for a lot of you, the question is, hey, how much is all this worth to you to actually invest and develop these systems? You can see why it's a great deal at $4,000. It's like private coaching one-on-one, and we usually charge $997 for it. But just for being here today, we're going to give you an offer because, as we like to say, you're special. It's $69 a month today at preachbetternow.com. You can even go to preachbetternow.com and just look at a breakdown of what's included, and you can see it. But I just want to tell you something. $69, okay, is crazy. You want to know why it's crazy? Because I do a lot of my own work at Starbucks, okay? And I buy a cup of coffee that's about $2.10 at Starbucks. For $69 a month, that's about a cup of coffee a day. It's about a cup of coffee a day. And I challenge church leaders. There are some church leaders who spend more on Starbucks than they've ever spent in investing in preaching tools for themselves. Okay, so my challenge to you is, for about a cup of coffee a day, you can have somebody like Matt that includes resources, that includes videos. You can have them in your office, at Starbucks, wherever you prep, with a community to plug into for about the cost of a cup of coffee. I mean, just absolutely crazy. And look at what else you get. Today you jump in, our fast action bonus is our Sermon Craft Notebook. One of the biggest questions we get all the time is, hey, how do you prep? What does it look like when you actually write your sermon? Just show me. We've got a Sermon Craft Notebook that we are going to ship to you that you can use to actually fill out and create your sermons. I mean, look, you can get started today for $69 at preachbetternow.com. And you've got two choices, which is do nothing, continue to go at preaching alone, okay? And look, you can make a very, 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 very small investment maybe less than you spend on coffee with your actual church staff, okay? And you can invest in a system that can actually help you grow in your preaching. The real question is, look, is it worth taking a few minutes just to go and look at preachbetternow.com and just see what the Preaching Rocket includes? Do not continue to spin your wheels. Don't continue to spin. Get a proven strategy, okay? And if we can, I think we've got the Preaching Rocket up. I'll just give you a second here. Aaron, you can go to preachbetternow.com, but I want to show you what the Preaching Rocket includes. Because a lot of church leaders are like, they've never ever invested in something like this. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what to look for. And we just want to show, if we can screen share for a second, we want to show you what the Preaching Rocket actually looks like inside Module 1. There it is. Great. So Module 1, how to build a sermon. And you're going to actually see what it includes. Coaching videos, just like Matt did today, okay? So you're going to be coached by a church leader that's just like you, that's actually delivering messages, okay? How to build a sermon. You're going to be able to watch coaching videos. You can listen to it on the go. There's listening guides. There's an ebook that comes with it. There are worksheets, okay? There are templates. Okay, listen, this is what it looks like. Somebody asked Matt earlier, hey, if you're behind, how do you get ahead? This is exactly how you get ahead, everybody. You set time aside, you log in, and you have somebody who is investing in you on things like how to build a sermon. And you do this every single month. And you do it again and again and again. Listen, look, you can be like Preacher Michael, okay, who just continues to shoot from the hip. It is Wild West Sunday. You never know what he's going to preach on, okay? Or you can be like Preacher John. And Preacher John, he's just a normal dude. He's just like me. He's just like Matt. We're just normal dudes who like UGA football, okay? Just normal guys with families, with life, and everything going on. The only difference between Matt being ready on Wednesday and you being not ready on Sunday morning is a system. That's the only difference. And setting aside a little bit of time on a planned calendar basis to actually do it. And you can take advantage of it. I want to show you what to do next. And that is go to preachbetternow.com, look at what you're going to get, and ask yourself, is this worth $69 a month? $69 a month, which is about a cup of coffee, okay, a day, that you can actually have private coaching in a multi-format usage. Matt, I want to bring you back up for some more Q&A. Go to preachbetternow.com, all right, and you can look at everything that is included there. Aaron, let's deliver Matt some more of these questions here, and in UGA fashion, he's going to carry it in for the touchdown here.
Yeah, we have more going here. Let me get back to this. See a lot of those mind mapping questions, so people want to see it, Matt. So maybe we'll get you to send us a picture of yours, and we can send it out in an email later. How do you incorporate music and media ministries in the calendar preparation phase in order to unify the message?
Let me give you a principle here and not just a specific application. Please, 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 please be okay with simple and sustainable. You know, I think there are a lot of good reasons to use media and to have a lot of cohesion with your music, but don't overdo it. Find a way to maybe connect just one song after the sermon. Find a way to use graphics in a way that's simple and consistent, but because I think simple and sustainable is going to get you a long way in life, and I think it's going to help you out a long way as you try to figure out how to coordinate your message with music, groups, all that type of stuff.
Awesome. How do you deal with guest preachers when making up your schedule? Do you ask them to preach to fit in kind of the topic, or do you leave empty days and let them choose their own topics?
It depends. You know, for outside preachers, sometimes we'll be bringing them in because they're going to be able to say something that I'm not going to be able to say as well. Can I just give y'all permission as preachers to do this? Only talk about what you know. If you're in the States right now and you feel like you need to talk about race or politics, but you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to race or politics, just because you have a Bible doesn't mean that you actually know what you should say. There are people that you could be able to connect to, not to come give a lecture on race or politics, but who can actually preach a biblical sermon on race and politics. They're out there, and so that might be a way that you use guest preachers. I would personally, it would be rare for me to bring somebody in to talk in a series for us because there's too much that you have to catch them up on. I don't think that means you can't. I just mean that for us, just trying to catch them up with the way we're trying to approach a particular series may be too difficult. So you can go either way, but I think that they're a great resource, particularly in areas where you're not very familiar with the subject matter.
That's great. Andrew actually just posted your blog post
Cool.
on mind mapping in the chat stream.
Awesome.
Dustin has a great question. He said that he is a bivocational pastor, and so he wants to know, how do you get 10 hours of time for sermon prep without feeling like you're neglecting your wife and kids?
So I have one advantage, and that is that what you're seeing here is my house. This is my office in my house, and so both my business and my office for the church happened from here. That's one of the things that we did. I'll say the other thing is that I have hard and fast start and stop times. So I start at a particular time of day, and I end at a particular time of day. And because we've cultivated an entire system of leaders in our church, I'm not the guy that everybody has to go to for everything. And so that's how we've been able to make it work, is, again, adopting a framework and a system, the same thing that Sam's been talking about with Preaching Rocket, into other areas of life has enabled me to do that. And we're going on 3.5 years now of doing this. And if my wife was here, she's out at the swimming pool with my kids, but if she was here, she'd tell you our marriage is better now than it was 3 years ago.
That's great. I think I have a couple more for you here. What's your advice for youth pastors that preach one message like on a Wednesday? How would you change that schedule for them?
Just start day one on Wednesday, get 2 weeks ahead. By the way, for anybody's like, how can I do this? Well, the next time you have a week off, start on your week off. Start the process on your week off. That's how you get into a 2-week schedule of getting ahead. But that's why we didn't just talk Sunday to Sunday, but we actually gave you kind of days by numbers. So just start with day one on a Wednesday, 2 weeks before, and then follow that same process and work it out that way.
Great. Last question for you. Do you suggest people using a sermon that they've preached on before, or just make up new ones every weekend?
I think you can use old sermons. I would really just pay attention to who's in the room, how has the audience changed. I think that what you'll find if you pay attention to people who preach for a long time is that you can even see collections of sermons where people will come back to the same text multiple times, but they'll have a slightly different angle on it, not because the message of that particular text has changed, but because of what the people gathered needed to hear. So if you have a good one, and in certain contexts, I think you can pull it back out. Just don't be lazy with it and just preach it as an excuse to not prepare.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
That was awesome.
Hey, Matt, man, listen, you said something that hits home, because we talk to so many church leaders, okay? And when you say things like, you bring in guest preachers, and if you don't know about a topic, don't talk about it. I think a lot of preachers don't invest in something like the Preaching Rocket because they simply feel like they shouldn't have to, and there's this hero mentality. And I was talking to some church leaders last week, and they're talking about how sermon prep for them is all driven by this feeling that they've got to reinvent the wheel every single week. They've got to come, and it's just like, man, that's all me, Can you just talk about like how you don't have to be a superhero, that it's about consistency and it's a marathon mentality, not a sprint mentality? Because I think too many church leaders, one of the reasons they're so exhausted is because they feel the weight of the world every week to come in and just blow everybody away. But you say things like, you're taking 12 weeks off a year. You're done on Wednesdays. Bring in a guest preacher. You're just saying these things, and I think a lot of preachers are like, man, that's crazy. Like, how can you do that? So maybe you can just relieve some of the pressure and stress here. Can you make any comments on that?
So if that's your situation, and you're watching this webinar, then let me just talk to you real clearly. It's possible that you've had real experiences where leaders in your church have demanded that you be the person who opens the Bible and talks to people. That exists. I know there's some parts of the world where that exists more strongly than others. But for most of us, if you think that you have to be the person who always opens the Bible for people, that's probably in your head. And as a pastor to other pastors, my assumption is that it's probably a heart issue for you, where you have forgotten that you're human and you've forgotten that ultimately you belong to Jesus, and you're beginning to make your preaching your identity. And so even though you're saying that you want time off, you're unwilling to do things like invest in a coaching program like Preaching Rocket, or to just walk in and build out a calendar and develop other preachers so you don't have to be the person. And so I would say unless you absolutely are forced to be the only person to communicate, take some steps to be able to build a team around you and to free yourself up to be the best that you can be, and that includes investing in Preaching Rocket. I'm absolutely convinced of it.
I love it, because here's the thing, and Aaron, if you can just go on to the next slide, if you're not signing up for something like the Preaching Rocket, it's because you don't want to try something new, okay? So you just keep doing the same old things that have gotten you where you are, all right? You're not used to investing in yourself, and that's something Matt just said. For some of you, you don't invest in yourself, okay? And I said at the beginning of this webinar, what makes us different, why we're here, is to invest in you. We're here, the Rocket Company exists to equip you so that you don't burn out, okay? We interact with over 10,000 church leaders now for over a decade, okay? Church leaders don't ask us about interpreting John chapter 6. Even though all that's important, what I'm saying is that they come to us and they talk about systems. And you attended this webinar today to hear about a system that allows you to do what you do better and actually enjoy it, which is what Matt's doing. So what I'm saying is you have to be willing to invest in yourself, okay? Maybe you're intimidated because you're busy. That's another reason why somebody wouldn't invest in the Preaching Rocket, is because you're already so slammed. You just think, the last thing I need is, if you're like me, sometimes I'm like, the last thing I need is one more login, one more password to remember, and one more, and what I'm saying is, you have to make the time. It's just like Matt said. He recommended using your week off to get ahead. Until you actually make the jump, until you actually put one foot in front of the other. I had a church leader ask me a couple weeks ago, what's like the first thing to do? Just literally, what's the baby step I can take to begin to put systems in place? And literally, it's like, log into the Preaching Rocket and just push play on the first video. Like, put 30 minutes on your calendar, go Starbucks or wherever you need to go, and literally push play on that video. And it's such a simple step, but you're so busy, sometimes you won't even take that step. So what I'm saying to you, if you fall into one of these three categories, you just don't want to change anything, I'm just telling you that you're going to burn out, okay? So we're really clear. Consistency, marathon ministry. You think about the top 10 church heroes that you follow. I think about my favorite 10 preachers, and I look at all of them. Marathon ministry, man. They're in ministry for a long, long time. That happens with systems and consistency. You've got to be willing to invest in yourself, and you've got to make time for it. Go to preachbetternow.com. Look at what you're going to get today, okay? Because we're not just saying Preaching Rocket. We're saying Upfront Digital. We're going to give you 10 new preaching stories. We're going to give you a Sermon Craft notebook for $69 today, okay? $69. That's a $2.10 cup of coffee every day of the month, all right? Some of us have done that. I have spent $2.10 on a cup of coffee every single day of the month before, and for that same amount, you could have a 12-month system at your fingertips. Listen, we want to thank you for being here. Just for staying to the end, we're going to tell you in the chat box how you can actually get the free resource, which is the greatest tool in your toolbox. Hey, Matt, man, just on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you for taking some of your valuable time to be with us and just sharing with us what you're doing in your preaching prep. Man, thanks. Really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. And again, it's just a real honor to serve everybody who's been on the webinar. Really, really grateful for your time. I think it's the most valuable resource we have. So thanks to everybody who stuck around till the end.
Hey guys, you can go to preachbetternow.com. There's a full explanation of everything that's included in today's offer. What we're saying today is you came here, you took time to be on this webinar, to listen to this content, so we know you want to preach better. We know that much because you're here, all right? But what we're saying is move ahead with the system, invest today at $69, and literally log in and start Module 1 today. Like, that's the step we want you to take, is to right now take advantage of this offer, because if you wait another week, another 2 weeks, another 3 weeks, what some church leaders do, and you keep doing the same old things and habits die hard, it's $997. All right, that's the price of the Preaching Rocket module. It does not include, upfront digital. It does not include 10 sermon stories. It does not include the Sermon Craft Notebook. We're saying that today it is $69 a month at a drastic price reduction. You can invest in the Preaching Rocket at preachbetternow.com. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, my name is Sam. I'm a team leader at the Rocket Company. We are here so that you can enjoy ministry, and we provide you with content. We provide you with systems, with tools, everything that you tell us you need. That's why we're here, is to give those things to you so that you can enjoy ministry, you can excel in ministry, and you can also have a great family life and enjoy your weekends as well. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you on our next webinar, preachbetternow.com, and you can take a look at the offer from today. Take care. We'll see you soon.